Last but not least, here we are, our final segment of Davos 2025. Please join me in welcoming DoorDash's Chief Corporate Affairs Officer, Liz Jarvis-Shean. Come on up here. Where's your mic? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So it's kind of funny that we're both up here on stage right now because we're both new at this Davos thing.
Davos newbies.
This is your first year.
First year.
What are you going to go back and tell your CEO about this?
I think what I'm probably going to say is that it is an incredible place to have deep conversations with incredibly intelligent people with a great global view. Everything from sort of like incisive moments to big visions, but that the most important thing is that when you leave Davos, you actually do something. That it can't just like it is, the big visions and the wicked insights are a necessary but not sufficient condition of something like this being successful. And so you have to, like what we're going to take back and some of the conversations we've had with, policymakers from markets where we operate. We're in 32 markets around the world. What are we going to do with those things? It's not just about having had the meeting, it's what do you do with it?
So, what's on your to-do list?
Gosh, a number of things. So, it is, sorry to beat the dead horse, AI, like there are some of those things of like, how do you think about for a company like DoorDash, right, where we're a three-sided marketplace. You have consumers who come to the platform to get the best of their neighborhood delivered to them conveniently. You have all of these local merchants, more than 500,000 around the world, who come to our platform to have e-commerce powered for them. And then you have Dashers and courier partners, more than 7 million a year coming looking for flexible earnings opportunities. What are the ways in which for all of those folks who come to our platform looking for something, are we going to deploy technology to help them? How do we make the consumer experience more delightful and more personalized through AI and machine learning? How do we help someone run their business, right? Small business owners have the longest to-do list of anyone I've ever met in my life. How can you leverage AI technology to help them do the things that are onerous and take too much time that you can then get done almost immediately and even have it be predictive? So it just takes that burden off of them. And for folks who are doing deliveries, how can we help use technology to make that delivery experience safer, more profitable, like all of those things? And so I think that's a big one. And then just continuing to think, the conversation here, Tony, my boss, Tony Shu, our CEO, talks a lot about you have to revisit your priors. And so in a world where 2024, the most elections that have ever taken place took place in 2024, and it was a bad year for incumbents all around the world. Obviously, there's been a lot of conversation about the election in the US, but we have new governments all over the world. You have to revisit your priors. You can't just assume that things are going to be the same, that you're going to engage. The government is going to be different. Their priorities are going to be different. The opportunities and the ways that you engage with them are going to need to be different. So how do we revisit those priors in that sort of global sphere?
I love that we're talking about that global dynamic because DoorDash, you recently expanded into EMEA with the acquisition of Volt.
Correct.
How has that changed your job? How has it changed the expectation of your team and of Tony now?
Sure. So yeah, about 2.5 years ago, we joined forces with an amazing company called Volt. They're based out of Helsinki. So today we're in 32 countries. Total population that we can serve is something like 750 million people. It's an incredible responsibility. I think in some ways, there's a lot that hasn't changed because I think successful M&A, and I would like to argue that this has been successful for us so far. The most important thing is that you find companies with cultures that are as similar as possible. Because otherwise the body rejects the organ transplant on both sides.
How would you describe your culture?
Our cultures are incredibly customer obsessed, right? Like particularly at the scale that we're talking about, it's important to look at the data, but it's very easy to get lost in that. You have to look at the edge cases. So everybody in our company does deliveries. Tons and tons of people in our company talk to merchants every single day. Like, what do we need to build for you next? What is the problem that you're having? And we're all customers as well. So we're all getting deliveries. We're all using the product every single day. And so being customer obsessed is a deep, deep value at both DoorDash and Volt. I think humility is a very profound value at both companies. And there is, I would say the last thing is what we would kind of call bias for action. It is like, do the thing quickly and then kind of iterate and continue to find a better way to do it. But, try to find a way to be the hot knife through butter.
In the same way that Sally has worked for a number of professional
Yes.
CEOs, you have worked for
Only founder
a
CEOs.
lot of founders.
Yes.
You were your DoorDash, Airbnb, Tesla.
Yes.
Tips for dealing with founders.
Yeah,
Big
and
personality founders.
yes, and I also, so one of the things that I do have in common with Sally is that we both started our career in politics and government, and I think in some ways that actually, almost irrespective of what kind of CEO you have, it helps you sort of understand that the way in which a company or an organization is deeply important on a personal level to a chief executive. But I think that's especially true for a founder CEO. And it's not to say that it's pure apples to apples, like Barack Obama is not identical to any of the founder CEOs that I've worked for. But you understand how meaningful it is to a founder CEO, a company is to a founder CEO in a way that, having not worked for sort of a professional CEO, I don't know that I have really a right to say one thing or the other. But like I do think there is just like an obsession with detail and vision that is like the through line for the founder CEOs I've worked for. You have to, because to be a founder CEO, like you have to defy gravity. You are doing a thing that is so bonkers and so impossible. You know, you are finding a new, like you're finding a new niche, you're inventing a new industry, you are raising money, everybody's telling you no, nobody wants to work for you. Like every single day you are defying gravity. And that never stops. Like they have that trait early. They have it on the first day, but they also have it in the 10th year and they have it in the 20th year. And you have to understand that and want to be a part of that to work there.
And probably channel that energy in a helpful way.
Yeah, but also it's also, I think, about, you know, one of the things that I do think is very interesting for a founder CEO is that they have, you know, the founders are the only people who've been with the company since day one. And that company changes dramatically over its life cycle, right? Like, and the responsibilities and the things that a CEO needs to do for employees, for external stakeholders, for your customers, for media, for policymakers, that is dramatically different from when when you're a year old and you have 50 employees to today we're, you know, 11 years old at DoorDash and we have 20,000 employees, and you know we're completely different. And so one of the things that's really fun about jobs like mine is that we get to partner with a CEO on that journey and have like, how do you talk to an employee group? How do you do an all hands for 100 people? And how do you do an all hands for 5,000 people? How do you, like, all of those kinds of things?
I have to ask.
Yeah, I know.
Since
Here it
Tesla
comes.
was one of your.
I know. Here it comes.
How did you partner?
Everybody take a shot.
How did you partner with that CEO when it comes to communication?
So look, everybody has lots of opinions about my former boss, and I'm not here to litigate any of those. What I will say is one of the things that I learned from Elon about communications is a lot of what we talk about now about sort of direct communications. Like when I was at Tesla, it was not the early days, but it was 2013 to 2015. We were still thought of by most of the automotive industry as like this adorable little California startup. Sort of like pat us on the head, like, oh, with your EVs, that's so cute. This is not going to last. And it meant that we had to do things very, very differently to reach an entirely new audience and tell them about an entirely new thing. And Elon, you know, he was not interested in doing sort of traditional automotive press that had a very sort of set schedule. You would go to the motor shows in Detroit or Frankfurt or Tokyo and you'd, you know, unveil a new car there, or you'd like talk to a certain set of media outlets. He's like, no, we have this incredible product and we have to tell the world about it ourselves. So we're going to do our product launches on our own timeline. And we are going, like, I am going to tell the story about it. If we make mistakes, we're going to say so, and we're going to say what we're going to do to fix it. I'm going to put it out on what was then called Twitter. We're going to put it out on our blog. And we're going to do it very, very much on our own and not through anything traditional.
Well, so how do you look at the media landscape now with the whole go direct debate?
Yeah. So I think it is the classic yes and. I think you have to continue, you know, even sort of anything, most of the traffic that you see on social, any of the work that people do potentially with influencers, like so much of the content that comes out is built off of something that is talked about in traditional media. So it is a yes and. You need to continue to have relationships with all kinds of traditional media. You also need to think about how do you communicate directly as a company. I don't know that people are always, it's interesting to hear Sally talk about it because I think There are some times when it's very, very helpful and effective to talk directly as a company. But I think in the new information landscape, what the power of podcasters, influencers, anybody on social media is that they have a connection to their audience. And so your responsibility as a communicator is to reach that audience eventually and to do it through a source that they trust.
You said something this week
I
that,
did.
that I'm still thinking
I
about
know.
as a member of the
I
media.
know. Yeah, I saw your jaw like hit the floor. Sorry about that. It's
It's
to treat influencers like it's to think of influencers almost in the same way that you think about beat reporters. So for communicators in the audience, you need to have a relationship with these folks because
but it's transactional.
it's yes and no, but it's like it is a different model insofar as for many of those people it is their business. And so they are both interested in sharing content and news, but they also, whereas you draw a paycheck irrespective of whether or not you cover a story I pitch, their paycheck is involves like what is this transaction? But they are also like fundamentally it is about I think respect for the audiences that you're trying to reach. And the audiences you're trying to reach, they trust different things today. They go to different places today than they did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And so our job is to reach them through those sources that they trust. And sometimes that might then feel more transactional because it is an influencer, it involves, sponsored content. But I also don't think that those influencers are effective or that anyone you talk to on social, even if they're not an influencer, a podcaster who sort of has a specific set of things that they like to talk about, none of that is effective if it also isn't authentic to the story that you're trying to tell and like at its core the product that you are probably talking about. And so you want them to have a relationship with your product. You want them to be a fan already. You want them to be excited about the things. And so you need to spend that time with them and invest that time with them and have that relationship and keep them educated and up to date on what's new, even if they're not going to post about it in the same way that somebody who's a beat reporter for a more
Right.
traditional outlet or a producer who covers you, you also want to keep them appraised of what's new.
Another audience you're trying to engage and
Yes.
educate and form a relationship with is the new administration.
Yes.
DoorDash is one of the companies that donated to the inaugural
Mhm.
committee. How are you planning to work with Trump 2.0?
I mean, look, so, we donated to the inaugural committee for President Trump. We did the same for President Biden. My CEO has met with President Biden. He has met with President Trump. I think similar to what Sally said is like, you have an obligation to engage with governments around the world on behalf of your company and frankly on behalf of your customers. And I think particularly for us, because so many of our customers, again, be they merchants, consumers, or the folks who come to the platform looking for work, like they need us to engage with governments around the world. So it is our obligation, it's our responsibility to them to have that conversation, to have that engagement with the Trump administration in the same way that we would engage with the Biden administration, and in the same way that in all of the other 30 markets where we operate, where there are new governments there, we're going to have that engagement. It is, Sally put it like, to not engage is the wrong call. It is, you need to find all of the ways to represent all of your stakeholders and their interests before policymakers. Um, and so, it how one does that obviously shifts like country by country, administration by administration. But I think the idea of not engaging is the wrong call.
Tell us what the internal Slack looked like after that news broke.
It was quiet. I think that our folks, it's like I think we have, and you and I had talked about this. One of the things that we learned kind of coming out of 2020, especially in the US, where it felt politically very volatile, sort of socio-politically very volatile, was we knew who we were as a company. We truly understand our mission. Our mission is to empower local economies. And Sally talked about I can't believe I'm about to disagree with Sally Sussman. So, but she said, her like she doesn't work for the CEO, she works for the company. I actually think we work for our customers. And so, how do we help all of those customers that include employees, but also include external stakeholders? Like, how do we help them know who we are and what to expect from us? And so, we constructed a framework that we call the Compass that helps us every single time sort of decide where and how to engage. And we
What
have
are some
things-
of the factors on the compass?
So the factors are like, is it core to our business? Because, when you have like any business, you can stretch anything to like a logical conclusion of like, well, this impacts us in some way, shape, and you're like, you have to find a way to keep it core to your business. And can we have an impact on it through our business in a way that is meaningful and significant? And if it's not, then it may be something that matters to a set of external stakeholders or employees internally, but we need to be clear about where we're going to engage. So part of what we have been clear about for years is that we engage with governments of all kind, from the local level to the state and provincial level to the national level. And so and so we talk about it at all hands, and we send it out in messages, and we've been very, very clear with everybody. Proactively ahead of time. Like, don't wait until the election results happen to tell people that you're engaging with governments or how you engage. Tell them, everybody's thinking about it. They're asking questions.
Do y'all have a PAC?
We have a federal PAC in the US. Yeah. But people are curious about it, and it's not just in the US. You've got, again, employees in Finland and Denmark and Georgia who are curious about like, how do we engage with government in these countries? So tell them, like, we tell them about the product roadmap, and we tell them about the new things on the ops side. We tell them about our new partners, Home Depot, now on DoorDash, as of yesterday. We tell them about those things. Why wouldn't we tell them about how we do political engagement? How do we talk to media?
So communicating more.
More, not less. Yeah.
More, not less. That is all the time we have. But
Okay.
I do like to end on that note. As a one fun thing, you had a really lovely idea.
I did.
And I'm happy to do this with you because you are an Axios reader from day one, as you
I
told
am.
us. You're familiar with the one fun thing. Since this is our last event of Davos, Liz thought that we should end with the toast.
With a toast.
So we will toast to all of you.
To all of you.
So
Thank you guys
much
for
for
coming.
being here. We appreciate it. Cheers. Thank you,
Cheers.
Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you so much. You can find all of our content on Axios.com. We hope to see you here next year. Safe travels home, and thanks again.